Okay, so we're going to move on to the next item, which is discussion of October 15th CalTrans Abatement of Interstate 580 eastbound Grove Way homeless encampment. And we're starting out with the Highway Patrol.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Officer Walters out of the Castro Valley office, and we're just here. I'm here to talk just about the CHP California Patrol part in the abatement on Grove Way at 580 eastbound, which happened October 14th through 29th. And this is kind of an odd piece of property that the state has. It runs up along Grove. I guess originally it was part of the corridor extension that was going to be brought in with the freeway. However, this is coming around here. Initially we were contacted by CalTrans of an abatement that was going to take place. So we were contracted with CalTrans to go in and provide security and protection during the cleanup. So that was CHP's involvement. But along that time, the property also bleeds in and abuts to Alameda County property, PG&E property, East Bay Regional Parks. So it's kind of a combined effort during that time because the encampment encompassed all those properties that we worked together during the encampment removal. So initial discoveries, again, it was bordered by county parks and water district lands, 5 acres of state property. We found cut fence lines with multiple camouflage access points, 20 encampments, approximately 40 persons, multiple dogs and cats, human feces and urine, hypodermic needles, extremely large piles of trash. That was just the initial discovery. And before we move on, during this operation, law enforcement is just one of the spokes in the community stakeholders. We were glad to see that prior to this, I don't know if I have the appropriate acronyms, I use state acronyms, but the housing community development, there was a lot of other resources that were provided out there. The local churches, First Press, I thought that was a really great initiative. So local impact. So during this, homeless using on-ramps and roadways to access the site, that was our primary safety concern. Destruction of property, polluted creek and hillsides, saturated crime, illicit drug use. And I'll start and I'll finish by saying not everyone there is a criminal or was involved in the crimes. It was just some individuals out there that overshadowed those that were living there. Okay. So lane number 2 of southbound Grove Way and eastbound 580 on-ramp closed during the project. So environmental impacts. So what we found there is the San Lorenzo Creek that runs through there was altered by damming and polluted with trash. The hillside was altered by encampments, tunnels, and dens were dug under Grove Way overpass. Trails cut into the hillsides and creek. There was exposed and buried hazardous materials throughout the site, including hypodermic needles, feces, urine, batteries, electronics, propane bottles, and controlled substances. There's also exposed and buried trash piles. These are just some of the pictures. I know it's a little hard to see. Top left corner is a hillside going down into a creek where you can see a lot of trash going into there. Bottom left is going into the campsite. Obviously on the right side, a large trash pile. Middle picture is damming in the creek. Far right picture was one of the dens that we discovered under Grove Way. Pretty elaborate where it was dug in kind of den. They extended about 10 by 20. All right, so hazardous waste that was removed, and we got these numbers by CalTrans. 25 55-gallon steel drums, 7 55-gallon plastic drums, 21 50-gallon plastic drums, and 10 30-gallon plastic poly drums, and those were filled with various hazardous wastes. The trash removed, so CalTrans removed approximately 55 tons of debris, which included 20 20-yard dumpsters. There was car tires, bicycle tires, furniture, and mattresses. During this project, the state resources were 4 officers per day at least 400 CHP hours over the project. CalTrans crews at 700 hours. There was about 100 feet of state fencing that had to be replaced, repaired. The initial estimated cleanup was $300,000, but the actual cost after invoicing will not be available for months. It is safe to assume the total cost will be north of $300,000 for this 5-acre parcel. Criminal activity. In this encampment, prior to work, threats were made to CalTrans crew members during the initial walkthrough. There was knives, machetes, makeshift weapons, bows, shooting targets that were discovered throughout the site. We did discover illicit drugs. There was marijuana plants and drug paraphernalia throughout the site. Also in there was suspected stolen property, including bikes, power tools, mail, open delivery package. And then going with Alameda County Sheriffs, looking at their data crime maps, there is saturated crime reported throughout that surrounding area. All right, so moving forward, CalTrans has issued Alameda County Sheriff's Office an open order to enforce encampments and trespassing on state property. That is our property that abuts with theirs. And the California Highway Patrol Cache Valley will maintain an open line of communication with ACSO. And the California Highway Patrol Cache Valley will conduct spot checks on this property. Also with that is Alameda County Sheriff's has been conducting weekly spot checks in that area that also abuts ours. Recommendations, and again, this is from a law enforcement standpoint, and again, law enforcement should be seen as a solution. County ordinances prohibiting panhandling in targeted locations. County ordinances prohibiting RV parking on unincorporated streets. And then Alameda County Human Resources, Mental Health, and other advocacy groups working along with law enforcement during spot checks and/or when encampments have been noticed. So that is the presentation.
I wanted to say I saw on Facebook the tour that you did with Robert Souza. I think he's got that on the Castro Valley page, or Castro Valley, it's probably on both pages. That was really good. I mean, to watch that. Council members, anybody else watch that?
Yeah, no, that was really good. Yeah,
yeah, especially before tonight, and looking at this and dealing with this, that was really helpful. I mean, even then, it's on film. It's hard to grasp the magnitude, but when you put the stats in here, 20-yard dumpsters, that's an enormous amount of waste. 20 dump truck loads, large dump truck loads. So that was, that was a huge undertaking. I thought we already had a panhandling ordinance. I thought we dealt with that at the beginning of the Great Recession, and we were getting people going through everybody's recycle bins. And Sergeant Schuler was here from the Sheriff's Department. I thought we went through that and did one of those already. So we should have that on the books already. We may need to look at amending it. And we did just discuss recently the beginning of an ordinance for RV parking on unincorporated streets, because that's actually been kind of a sneaky problem, in the neighborhoods, where just people keeping their own RVs on the streets for too long, too big an RV on for too long. But now it's clearly changed to what we have now. So that's definitely something that we're going to work on with county staff to try to get that ordinance craft. And the panhandling, we can certainly revisit that again and see if it needs to be amended, because it was a different problem that we had, I think, back then. So I guess the question is there anything else we can do?
It's an issue that I think that the whole community has to get involved in. I know law enforcement, we go in there and we're the ones that have to go out there and unfortunately displace a lot of people. But in the end, it is property that has to be secured, liability issues. But I was just taken back by the amount of resources and community that came together on this one to help out the folks. I think that moving forward, when we discover a large site like that, we need to keep that in mind and make sure as law enforcement that we're not overlooking that we're getting the community stakeholders involved with that we're not the only ones going out there to deal with the folks, that we're just going to be continually chasing them around from site to site. We need to somehow, help them out rather than chase them from site to site.
Do you have is there anything that can be done on private property? Because I think I know what you're talking about is publicly owned land, but we have a situation here in town that we brought up once before, where the car wash on Lake Chabot Road, the gentleman that owns that is allowing a homeless encampment in the back of it behind the dumpsters right on the concrete creek right there. The neighbors have complained to the county. We actually directly asked code enforcement when they were here, standing right there, to do something about it. And I've sent several emails that have just been completely ignored. So I'm wondering, when you chase them out of those locations, they're going to pop up in other locations, and in some cases, it's going to be on private property. But what do you do when you have, I guess, a private property owner that, well, isn't cooperating to remove them?
That'd be a little out of my wheelhouse, county versus state. That would probably be better answered by the sheriff's department.
Okay.
Yeah, they deal with the private property aspect of it.
I just wanted to take a shot because you were here, and we actually did ask the sheriff already. So they said there wasn't much they could do if the private property owner wasn't cooperating. So we have to figure something out because we can't seem to get code enforcement to respond to it, because this is happening on private property on the boulevard and just off the boulevard and other locations as well. It's not just on publicly owned land.
Right.
So is there any questions for CHP officer?
I thought there was an encampment somewhere up in Coal Canyon that we're having a problem with too.
Once again, is that private property though?
No, I think that's a park property up in Coal Canyon. It came up in a couple different ag meetings, and the sheriff's department was constantly cleaning it up or working on it.
All right. So
I'm just wondering, is there something we could do on a regular basis with helping the folks that end up there, but also not letting it get to a point where we have, this many dumpster loads, this many issues to deal with, and end up being, $300,000 in a cleanup. And what can we do from a county standpoint to identify these areas before they get to this point? Because this is pretty tough.
That $300,000 could be put to better use helping people.
Yeah, no, that $300,000 would have been better use with a couple portables, and you know what I mean? But,
I don't. I think we're trying to figure that out, basically.
Yeah.
So, is there any other questions for a CHP officer?
No, that's
Okay.
No.
Thank you, sir.
though.
Appreciate your time and your service. Did we have any gentlemen from CalTrans? Come on up, sir. Quickly. No, I'm just kidding.
All that work down there made you limp?
Yeah, I can't sit too long. Thank you for allowing me to be here. My name is David Despade. I'm the maintenance manager for CalTrans. I'm over Alameda and Contra Costa counties. So we started this roadway encampment reach out with Officer Miley's office quite a while ago. We've been talking about it, and then when we decided to go ahead and go and clean up is once we were informed that they were able to start working on reaching out to them for social services. So we did start it. I'm sorry, I do need to apologize. I didn't have a handout. I wasn't aware I needed to bring handouts. But on the screen behind you it's like some of the postings that we have. When we go out and post a encampment, we do go out with CHP and we look around and we try to get an idea of how large the camp is, how many people are there. This particular posting part here is the dialing 211 social services that are offered through Alameda County. That is our notice to vacate the illegal campsite that CalTrans is required to do. It gives them a minimum of 72 hours to be prepared to be vacated. In this particular case, we did go out a little over a week ahead and post it with at least a week's notice, and then we went back in and gave them a final 72-hour notice. And on that flyer or posting, it talks about the California vehicle codes and the penal codes of why they cannot be on state operating right away. There we go. Okay, so just a few pictures here. This is kind of before cleanup. This is one of the larger sites that was there. This is down close to the river. You notice, the walkway in there and everything, which also causes more erosion problems for other items. It's another one of the sites. So, as you can see, there's a lot of trash. In this particular case, a lot of this trash, like the officer mentioned, feces and urine and other items, dog feces and everything, were working their way into the creeks. And that becomes a major issue, and because the creeks are actually on state property in that area, that makes us liable with fish and game for the hazmat. So we needed to get in there and get it cleaned up. I'm sorry, I'm clicking too fast. These are just more sites that were there of all the different debris that was out there. And in some of these pictures, it's hard to see, but there are a few hazardous waste. You'll see needles, propane cylinders, chemicals that we had no idea what they were or anything like that. So, and because of that reason, we had to reach out and we contracted out to Clean Harbors for the hazardous materials disposal. That's just a picture of them. We also were out there with our law enforcement partners. We had CHP out there. We also had Alameda County Sheriff out there. Okay, so after cleanup, this is pretty much what it's looking like at this point. It's not as beautiful as it could be. We did have a total of, I had 4 landscape crews working that area and our tree crews out there. So there are some areas that they couldn't get to in the 10 days it took to do this cleanup. But we did trim up a lot of the trees, cleaned out the riverbed as best we could without being in violations, and picked up the litter, the debris. This is actually a picture, the first picture I showed you where the tent was in there in the walkway. We had to take all that walkway out and everything for the erosion issues. This is where we once had a fence line that was torn down. We did remove a little, some of the fence to get the equipment in and out. The contractor literally had to go in with a bobcat loader and bring the stuff out bucketful by bucketful. And just some more of the areas that was cleaned up. And this is when most of our fence, we were able to reestablish our fence lines. Okay, so in total, CalTrans cost only, we spent almost about $14,599 in dump fees. Out of that was like 400 cubic yards of material, which I believe the CHP officer had worked out to be 500 tons, I think, on that total thing. CalTrans labor and equipment came to $59,400. That includes a few miscellaneous things, and our contractor costs are estimated to be about $260,000. He's not going to be able to invoice me probably for another 30 days. He still has 5 or 6 trucks, he told me, that are still en route to or back from the Argonite, Utah disposal area, where they will take care of a lot of the hazmat, where they can incinerate it and dispose of it properly. So we're still waiting for those charges. But we're looking at $260,000 or more. So the total is going to be around $320,000 is what we estimate. And that's all I have. Do you have any questions?
A lot.
Council members, questions? Not at this time, I guess.
I guess.
Oh, did you? Go ahead.
Just, why was it allowed to go on for so long, I guess is.
Well, that's hard for me to question. I've only been in this position for about a year now.
Okay.
A lot of it was mostly, there was a lot of confusion, the multi-jurisdictional area right there between 5 or 6 different agencies of whose was on whose property, back and forth. There were some other cleanups in the past, but there was individual efforts. So we would come in on the CalTrans side and clean up that. The tenants would just move over to somebody else's property, and then they'd move back and forth. So it took a while to set up the concerted effort with all agencies involved to do a complete cleanup.
Do we know how long it was there? Any idea?
I do not know. I've heard. Okay.
Long time.
That's what I've heard. It's been around, different parts of it have been around, so I don't know. I'm not sure if anybody has a real exact total for, what's on which property and all that stuff.
Questions?
No.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any other presenters on this?
We need to keep the comments to 2 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm Kathleen Clannon. I'm the medical director for the county for Healthcare Services Agency. So we actually had the opportunity to do some joint work with CHP and CalTrans in advance of the abatement. We put together what we refer to as a multi-service pop-up. We were able to do that twice between the time when the site was posted and when the abatement began. We brought with us 8 different agencies: Healthcare for the Homeless, the Housing and Community Development folks who were able to talk through with people what the shelter options were, Vector Control, Probation came to see whether there were any of their folks there that they could offer support to. The Sheriff's Office came, and Social Services to see if we could sign anybody up for benefits of various sorts that they may not have been connected to. My colleague from HCD already told you that we were able, with the cooperation of First Presbyterian, to open early some 30 shelter beds. They were not the low barrier shelter that we needed for the people who were living long-term living in this area. So long-term. So the beds that were available at the time of the abatement, people were not allowed to bring pets in. That's a really big deal. About half the people at the site had some kind of pet with them. And then in addition, there were the ability to bring partners and to have privacy and to bring your possessions with you. We did the first pop-up. We had 13 agencies or organizations with us. We had talked to 16 different people who came to the pop-up to receive some kind of service. Pop-up number 2, we had 8 agencies that came back in the 3 days before the encampment. And we, since the encampment, what we've seen is that a number of people who are living there have, in fact, as predictable, have moved to nearby areas. And we're seeing about 8 residents at a time in the shelter. We're hoping that December 1st, when the full-time winter shelter is available, which is able to receive pets, that we'll be able to welcome some more people in there. We have made that promise to people who were displaced. So that's what we were able to accomplish in the time between when the abatement was posted and when it happened. And it's not enough. It's not what we would want to be able to offer to people. It's really difficult when people are displaced in this way. Any efforts they've been making to stand up frequently get knocked down, and they start from scratch again. But that is what we were able to do. We've had good partnership with CalTrans and with the CHP, as we do ongoing with the Sheriff's Office, in order to be able to do these events safely for all the people who are involved. So, and I'm happy to take any questions about that.
Any questions, council members?
How many people were evicted from that area?
So there were about 40 people who were on the site when we first came. We were able to connect with 20 of them individually, and we also have a long-term partner, Abode Services, that was our partner in this area, who had been going by the area on a regular basis, actually, for some months before the abatement came. The thing is that we don't really have great choices to offer people about where to go. And that's, in the absence of that, it's hard for people to take advantage of the services.
Do you have a suggestion on what we should be able to offer them?
I think that the low barrier shelters, like the navigation centers that we discussed at the beginning, are our best option for now. We can put them relatively quickly in areas. That is an option that I think allows people they can have pets, privacy, partners, and possessions with them, which is what makes it low barrier. And people are able to really put the backpack down for a minute to be able to work on what they need to work on.
You know when that's going to open?
The one that is in the
You're working on?
unincorporated area
Yeah.
on the Fairmont campus,
yeah.
we're looking at in the first few months of 2020.
Okay, great.
When that opens, the occupancy is probably 100 if you had the beds, no?
So 50 is how many beds there will be.
Yeah, I mean, I understand there's going to be 50, like Hayward just opened one today, I think it was.
Right.
And I understand that that's pretty much already committed to being full.
We've heard that also.
Yeah.
The usual way that these low barrier shelters work is that the outreach teams connect with people who are living outside and identify people who have an exit strategy where they need some time and space to be able to work on those things, and invite people into the navigation center. Or when there is something like an abatement like this, people get invited in. So it's not a place where people can, like a magnet for people to just go and walk in to get services. And we have promised the neighbors that, and that's really how these services generally work, is that they are, in a sense, invitations to people who are currently experiencing homelessness in the unincorporated area, and like I said, optimally people who we can see have an exit strategy if they have some time and space and peace to be able to do that in, so that then we can turn over the beds. We're hoping to serve 100 people in a year, or possibly more, depending on how many people can move through in a matter of months.
Any other questions, council members? Okay, thank you very much. Any other presenters on this? Okay, I got some speaker cards. Let's go through those. We're going to hold speakers to 2 minutes due to the late hour. We'll start with Marnell. And after Marnell is Rebecca.
Good evening. My name is Marnell Timpson. I've lived in this area for many moons. I've owned a house over on Vestal Street, and I'm now currently homeless. I am staying at the First Pres shelter, and I guess I'm up here to speak to the fact that just moving people around is not going to get us anywhere. We can do an ordinance so that people can't park. We can do an ordinance so that people can't get, but they're just going to have to, they're people, they're going to move. They're going to have to go somewhere. I hope you're not the town that says, not us, because I was once one of those people, not in my backyard. When I owned that house, a lady up the street opened a boarding house for people that had mental and abuse problems. And I was infuriated. I really was. My property values, my kids, and I've come full circle in life to find out that we're all just human beings. It's so important that we do something for our community's homeless, not for Oakland's homeless, not for Hayward's, but for ours. They are our children in a way. So I just really, really ask you to keep that in mind. We're not asking you to take on the world, we're asking you to take on your own neighbors. They are your neighbors, and they have been for quite some time. Thank you.
Thank you. After Rebecca is Sherelle.
Good evening. I'm here tonight to oppose 2 of the proposed ordinances that CHP suggested tonight. Specifically, I want to oppose a proposed ban on panhandling, and which includes, I also would oppose any efforts to stop people from rooting through recycling bins looking for, the recycles. And I also oppose any ban on RV parking on unincorporated streets. These bans would amount to criminalizing poverty in our community, and it's also specifically targeting an already vulnerable population and increasing the chance of them being in, coming into increased conflict with other residents and with law enforcement, at a time when, someone is maybe going through a really rough situation. The last thing they need is more conflict in their lives. I want to reiterate what some people are already saying, which is that homeless people are part of our community. Forcing them out of our view and out of our community and calling it displacement is a pathetic attempt to make it someone else's problem, to make it Hayward's problem or Oakland's problem. But it's our problem. It's our societal failing. We've heard dire stats on housing tonight. We've heard dire stats on what is available to homeless people. It's clearly insufficient. In the long run, we need more housing. We need more support for those on the verge of homelessness. If you catch people right before they're homeless, it turns out that like one small cash infusion can make a huge long-term difference in their housing stability. But now we need to support the stability of those who are homeless. That's something that we need to do now. The proposed ordinances would instead endanger the very survival of the homeless members of our community. So I ask you to not support any ordinance that would be criminalizing poverty, but instead work with the homeless community on solutions. Thank you.
After Sherelle is Melissa. Is there Sherelle here? Yeah. Sherrill. Cheryl? Yeah. It's okay.
Yes. I spoke earlier. I'm going to reiterate. My comments are crime, theft, loss. Okay? Us as a homeless community, okay? With facts. There were 6 couples that lived at that encampment for 4 years. We had an outreach officer with the regional park. We had other people move in. We reached out to law enforcement, we reached out to agencies, we reached out to county. We asked for help. The crime increased, we didn't get it. We don't want to be in the public's eye. We don't want to be a public problem. But like I said, the system in place is not working. And yes, there are people that did drugs. Yes, there are people that sold drugs. Yes, there are people but when it was brought to the county's attention, brought to the state's attention, brought to law enforcement's attention, I mean, the tunnel that was put underneath the Groveway Bridge, I personally brought that to law enforcement and CalTrans' attention over 6 months ago. That is a public safety matter. That is against the wall, with the street main support wall. Nothing was ever addressed. But then you read the articles, you read the stories, and you read the information you guys are given, and it's all one-sided. It's all lumping us into doing these all things. Where's accountability for law enforcement when we needed help to reach out to stop these things? We had 2 houses somebody sold next door to us. We reached out and said, there's people in those houses. They're stripping of a carpet. Nothing was done until after the fact. But now we get blamed for it. And like this, there's some of us that have pets, partners, and family. We don't want to be a public eye. We don't want to be a public problem. But when we're out of sight, out of mind, we ask for dumpsters. We ask for help. Stanley Andrew, we had Juvenile Hall. There's an encampment. They receive dumpsters. They receive bathrooms, and they're monitored. We asked for that. We've got nothing. And we accept responsibility for what we did, and we never said that we didn't do anything wrong, and we didn't say that we wanted to stay. But like they just said, you can't keep pushing somebody around in circles and not offer them a safe place to stop and rest. And I challenge any of you: take your house, and you have to find a place to go, move out of your house, in 7 days, be gone, out of sight, out of mind. Like I said, the system doesn't work, and we're just asking for help and accountability, and not to be victimized, and not to be And we don't want the other agencies. We don't want the churches that are helping us. We don't want anybody else that's helping us, reaching out. I've read the comments. People read the comments. The church down the street, Church, is getting negative comments. Our community as a whole is prosecuting and going after them down and saying what they're doing is wrong. I challenge anybody, any council member, board member, anybody in town wants to come to talk to one of us that live there, actually live there and live there from day 1 to day 2. We'll tell you what happened. We'll tell how, you're not going to county code it. We'll take accountability for our responsibilities out of it. Law enforcement from all sides,
Okay, thank you. Time's up. Melissa Moore. After Melissa is Rebecca Grinstead.
Hi, council members again. I just wanted to speak. I don't have 2 minutes. I'm going to try to keep it short, but I have so much to say, but I'm going to keep it short and try not to get emotional. Logistically, the abatement failed miserably for everybody involved. And accountability and transparency is something that is needed from all agencies, truly. CHP, accountability due to they didn't do their due diligence on making sure the facts were correct before putting out information to the public on basically the site numbers, the years established of the camp. Also, the video shows areas that are not even part of our camp, our immediate camp. Sheriff's Department, that's what I really want to touch on. The Sheriff's presence in invading areas has skyrocketed, and the homeless are being watched, followed, stopped, and harassed many times per day. The ones on bicycles, 30 and over, that's that ride bicycles with backpacks and 30 and over, we are profiled and being called rolling probable causes, not legal terms, their terms. We pulled over, constantly, many times a day, all of us, walking, bicycling, whatever, with no reason being pulled over. Just they want to see, want to know where we're going, what are we doing. No reason at all. It's against our civil rights, and it's profiling. It's harassment. We don't understand. We're just trying. You're gonna have 40 people that you kicked out of a camp. You're gonna see them on the street. I mean, regardless, we're not doing anything wrong. We're just trying to get from point A to point B, and we're being profiled for that. It's not right. Also, they do at First Presbyterian Church, the shelter. They've done walkthroughs for no reason at all. They just come through with that, being quiet, being silent, walking through, looking at everybody, and leaving. That's our safe place. That's the only place we have left that's safe. We felt. They're doing drive-bys in front of the church, just making sure that people sitting in front of the church, when you get in, see them. Their presence. It's intimidation and bullying factors are tactics that are not acceptable. Last but not least, we had a shooting incident 2 days, I believe it was 2 days after the encampment was abated. 2 dogs were shot. Those were camp dogs. They were puppies. The dog sat one of them the night before. They were not aggressive. They heard let me finish this, please. I'll make it quick. They heard a noise. They barked. The sheriff came out of the bushes, did not identify himself, had a gun drawn, shot them, and then identified himself as Abatement County Sheriff's. Put up your dogs. That bullet could ricochet off anything, hit somebody on the streets, or hit any member of the people down there. There was only 8 people down there. They had stopped there for a couple of days to regroup. Those dogs did not pose a threat to anybody. And they let the dogs suffer. One of them died at the scene. The other one, Karma, bled out at the scene for an hour and a half while they processed the people. And finally got transported to Dublin, where he passed away. Where's accountability and transparency on that? We have not heard anything from the Sheriff's Department on that. It's just not right. We're a witch hunt, and we don't deserve it. We're just trying to find a different place to go and trying to find better solutions. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Rebecca. After Rebecca is Andre Mary.
This on? Hi, I'm Rebecca. I'm your neighbor. I want to talk about the 2 ordinances that are being recommended. I don't agree that these are a good solution. I think our law enforcement has better things to do than essentially fining people for being poor. I don't think we should be criminalizing homelessness. We should criminalize crime, but not homelessness. These are our neighbors, as well as me, who lives in an apartment. Thank you. Have a good night.
Andra Marv? Andrea? Okay. Sarah Lamnon?
Good evening. I'm Sarah Lamnon. I am on the Hayward City Council, but tonight I actually am here as a chair of the Task Force to End Hunger and Homelessness. We've been around since 2013 looking at not just Hayward, but the unincorporated and surrounding areas. And so wanted to offer ourselves as a venue to bring together community. You certainly can look at more law enforcement options, and I really want to appreciate the approach in this particular clean out, the idea that there was somewhere for people to go, the idea that there was noticing, and that noticing was longer than we often have, that 3-day requirement. So there was a lot that went right this time. And there's some stuff that can be learned and be done differently in the future. And I think there's real opportunity. For instance, we all have these CalTrans properties, these multi-jurisdictional difficult areas, and the opportunity to come together and perhaps have people staying there on purpose who are helping to keep the place clean, and other options that create jobs, that create housing. Together, I think we could come up with some solutions. And I think if we're going to spend time on creating solutions and opportunities, as has been discussed, that the best use of that energy is probably on coming up with those collaborative solutions where we're on purpose occupying those spaces in a productive way rather than creating new ordinances. Thank you.
Okay, I don't have any other speaker cards. Council members, this is an informational item. So, thoughts, council members? Any? It's not. The public portion is closed, ma'am. I'm sorry. It's time for the council to talk, not for the public.
So when we put in the ordinance, and it wasn't regarding the homeless, but it was people that were going through garbage cans, pulling out whatever they wanted to recycle, but leaving a mess on homeowners' properties. And we had so many people complaining about it that this body, we had to establish something. And so, you know, I stand by what we did, because it's difficult when somebody has to go back in after that, and it's every week. If the garbage day is Tuesday, then, you know, the next Tuesday and the next Tuesday, and, you know, property owners were having to do that. So it was a problem. I hate to see mobile homes like you saw earlier where there's just nothing but garbage around it. And I've got a property in Union City that I'm going to put on the market, and they had a trailer that hasn't been driven for 25 years. And when I got somebody over there to disassemble it, the garbage, the rodents, and everything that was, and it was a hazard to the neighborhood. So those are the things that I don't think anybody in this town, and I don't care where you live, be it on the street or apartment or a McMansion, nobody wants to see that. And you know, so we have ordinances to make our community what it is. And I mean, I'm hoping that our social services can come in and we can help, because you guys are part of our community. And I hope we can come up with something. I don't know if it's the transit center or whatever, but transition center, we have to do something to help people, but people have to be willing to help themselves as well.
I was very happy to hear that we had done something with that property down there. It had been going on for a very, very long time. It's great to hear that we had a lot of support within the county to help some of those folks. I would hope that going forward, we wouldn't allow it to get to that point of 4 years of people living in that kind of environment. And certainly down by the creek, you know, I'm a rancher, and I will tell you that if my horses or cows get near the creek, I'm in trouble with Fish and Game. To see those conditions down there in a habitat, to me, is pretty unacceptable. So I was disappointed that it went on for 4 years before we were able to get it cleaned up. I would hope that as we identify those kind of locations going forward, we could do it earlier, and get those folks that are there some help somewhere, but certainly not in that environment. I think our county did a great job.
Comments? Okay.
I got one thing. The programs that we've been working on and putting in place, you know, they're definitely behind of where they really need to be, but at least there's some efforts being made, and hopefully as these things come online that you guys can get the help that you need, and it'll promote these things. But no matter what, everybody needs to be accountable, and and some of these things there's no excuse for, and I know that the help's not there for some people, but accountability is really important for us all to live together. So, and be respectful to each other. So anyways, hopefully the next few months will show something positive in this direction.
I'm on the safe parking program, and I've been in some of these meetings, and you know, I think we're making some strides with the navigation building being built, brought in, but we can't have people living in that environment where it's not safe, it's not sanitary, you know. So I think, you know, First Press is making some baby steps and doing some good things, opening up the warming shelter, putting some tiny homes. We got the navigation center. So hopefully in time we'll be able to address more and more numbers. So when this does get cleaned up, people have a place to go.
Well, I want to thank CalTrans, CHP, county staff for their work on this, because that was a lot to do and a big, project to put together. And hopefully we don't have a situation where it gets that bad. Hopefully this is like the turning point where we can, keep an eye on these areas a little bit better so that we don't have these issues. It sounds like CHP and Sheriff are making regular patrols of the area to try to avoid that. And, we've already stated we're going to try to do what we can do sitting up here and reviewing these ordinances and crafting new ordinances. And we're doing that in response to other people in the community that see these problems as a real issue, and definitely having people living in RVs on public streets is not a whole lot better situation than having people living by the creeks. You talk to some of the Oakland police officers, and they have a big problem with that in Oakland, and the sanitary conditions around those vehicles is pretty bad as well. So I think the idea is that we want to raise the standard of living for the homeless. We don't necessarily want to drag the standard of living down for everybody else, and that would be the intent of these ordinances. So we'll pursue those and meet with county staff to see what we can do on our end. And with that, we are adjourned.
Did Craig mean to leave these?